I'm going to say something a little bit strange here, but what if I told you that you running your business is very similar to a choreographed dance that you would perform on stage in front of 100 people? I know that sounds a little weird, but you're actually already doing it. You know, life is a stage and everything's a performance, and I'm not talking about being a thespian or whatever that word is. I'm talking about making more money, having more peace in your business, making your customers worth more, increasing the stickiness, your profits. You know, a lot of business success is counterintuitive, and maybe you've never looked at it like this, but have you ever thought that you're actually the lead director of a choreographed play? Because in a way, that's what business is. Think about it. You know, there's kind of this opening scene, and you maybe have an ad or a flyer or some sort of advertising that's out there, and people are like introduced to the idea of you and your business. And then between that moment and when they refer their best friend to also hire you, there's all these things that are happening. And maybe you're not looking at it as choreography, but that is exactly what it is. From the way you answer the phone, the tonality of your voice, and 100 other little steps in between. In this video, what I want to do is go through kind of 5 different parts of how you can reframe your brain to think about this so you can ultimately make more money. And I hope this is valuable. If you like content like this, you know, like and subscribe. We have a small team, a small YouTube channel, and we just want to bring the fire for you so you can think outside the box and leave your competition in the dust. So the first thing I want to do is give you some examples of choreography. Have you ever went to a really nice restaurant? It's a really easy example to use, although it applies to like every business. If you go to a really nice restaurant, things are different. Actually, most everything is different. When I was young, I didn't grow up with a lot of money. We had all of our needs met. My parents loved us and took care of us. But we thought that going to Ponderosa Steakhouse was like this crazy big deal. And I didn't realize till I was older that Ponderosa isn't exactly a really and actually nice restaurant. I think you can buy an upgraded steak for like $4 or $6 at Ponderosa. And there's a big difference between the $5 steak and $165 steak at a place like Nick and Sam's in downtown Dallas. And if you go to one of these really fancy places, you'll notice that the whole vibe is entirely different. There's more intentional choreography. And it's really interesting, and we can learn a lot for whatever kind of business you have by looking at what they do. For example, the lighting is different. Sometimes it's a little bit darker in these nice restaurants. The ambiance, the smell is different. Some restaurants, some hotels, they have signature scents, which is really interesting. I think Hilton Hotel has like a branded signature scent when you walk into the lobby of any of the hotels. There's certain types of music playing. There's different uniforms that the servers and waitstaff are using. There's more types of servers. You don't just have one waiter or waitress. You have like the dedicated water guy that's running around from table to table with a white towel on his arm, and he, you know, carefully pours the water over his arm, right? And all these things are happening as you're kind of soaking it all in. And then you pick up the menu, and the menu is really heavy. My wife and I on date night went to a restaurant in Dallas. I can't remember the name of it, or I'd give them a shout out. But their menus, when you opened it, was LED backlit. It was wild, right? And so the silverware is heavier. The linen is thicker. The way that the server presents the food to you is totally different. In fact, it's pretty typical in a really high-end restaurant. They'll bring over this giant wooden tray, and they'll have 2 or 3 or 4 people holding up this tray, and they explain all the different cuts of meat and the different seafood options and all the different chef specials for that night. And this is just like the opening act. It's wild. And there's so much psychology in this, and there's so many things happening. But have you ever thought that when you answer your phone or you reply to an email or you go give an estimate to someone that you're actually doing the same thing? And whether you realize it or not, you already are performing a display of choreography to your customers. And so the question is, how do we upgrade and enhance the things that you're already doing in simple ways? I'm not suggesting you have to do crazy over-the-top things, although maybe you should consider it, but maybe just the tonality or the voice inflection, the pacing when you're on the phone. Do you train your office people to mirror the person they're talking to? You know, if you're talking to a 62-year-old sweet little old lady, well, that's not that old. 60 is the new 40, am I right? Let's say it's an 82-year-old sweet little old lady and she calls your office. Are we talking slower, more clear to her? And then if a 29-year-old attorney who drives a leased Porsche and thinks he's really cool, if he calls your office, maybe we talk to that guy different. We get to the facts, it's bottom line. We talk fast, the speed is increased, right? The clarity is increased. So there's all these things, you know, and then when you give literature to your customers, is it just junky paper? Is it thick? Is it glossy? Is it different? I like the paper that's made out of linen, because even the texture of that, even though it seems like a silly nonsense thing, when you compound all these things together, they equal a greater perceived value for your customer. At the end of the day, choreography is all about perceived value. Value is not a black and white, plus or minus thing. Value is a subjective reality that changes and is different inside the head of each different person. One person could buy a $5,000 Louis Vuitton bag and there's massive perceived value in that, where another person could think it's a cataclysmic waste of money and absolutely outrageous, and they'd be embarrassed to even possess the same bag. And so your customers, as they're interacting with your business, they're starting to build in their mind a story about how much your stuff is worth. They're starting to build a narrative about the value that they think you're going to provide. What's really interesting is when I work with really small companies, sometimes we can just enhance some of these small things. And we can enhance the sales process a little bit, the way the person is dressed, the way that they walk around the property. We present the most expensive things first and then walk it down. We also make sure to take a moment and tell the customer what they don't need, what services they don't need, because it builds trust. And this choreographed process can raise their average ticket sometimes by double, just by doing that. And what's fascinating to me is if they're competing with another, local competitor, and the guy I'm working with doing this, looking at this like this, is winning. What's really sad is the competitor is going to go lower their price because they're competing and losing, but they think that the problem is the dollars. Oftentimes the problem is not the dollars, it's the choreographed presentation, it's the perception. The perfect scenario is when a customer hires you because they're pleasantly surprised you're only $500 more than the other company. Because the other company that has no choreography in any of their systems, the way they engage with the customer, they kind of present a price like it's a transaction or it's a commodity. And maybe their price is $500, but you, because you start thinking like this, from the phone call to the email to the follow-up to the presentation of the estimate to the building of the trust and telling people what they don't need and walking back from the most expensive down to the other one, that whole process feels like you're going to be $1,500. And when your price comes in at $1,000, you're only $500 more than this guy that did nothing. You can see how this starts to compound. And so value is subjective, but you are the choir director of what that value feels like to your customer. A second thing to point out is that who people think the messenger is usually more important than the message. And what does this mean? It sounds like nonsense. No, it's actually really powerful. You see, have you ever noticed that a famous person like Gary Vaynerchuk on Twitter, he could tweet "never give up" and push publish, and it will get 100,000 shares, right? All kinds of comments. Gary, you're a genius. This is amazing, right? And what he said is a very simple, common kind of business positive thinking trope. It's good, never give up, that's good, but it's just out there. There's nothing particularly interesting about that because we've all heard it 50 times. But then if you went on your Facebook or your Twitter and you tweeted "never give up," no one would like it. Well, why is that? It's because part of the value creation process and part of what we want to do when we're choreographing things is figure out who do people think that we are before they even really hear our core message. Or in your case, who do they think that your company is? What authority do they think that you hold before you even present the price? This is a big deal, and there's little simple things you can do, like on your website, you can install what are called trust badges. You're the best local business to work for 3 years in a row, and there's a little badge of your local newspaper or something. You're a Better Business Bureau, something, there's a trust badge. There's things you can do, awards, certifications, things like that you can display to establish a little bit of authority. But there's other things you can do to establish authority. One weird out-of-the-box idea that I think is really powerful is write a book. Write a book or a booklet that's physically printed as part of your sales process. Even if you have a pressure cleaning company or something, what if you, as the owner of that company, were the author of the top 5 mistakes homeowners make when choosing a pressure cleaner? That little book that might cost you 75 cents or $1.25 to print, when it's handed to the customer, it establishes authority and it increases who people think that you are before they even get to your real message. And there's like 100 ways to think of this. It's really exciting, at least if you're a nerd like me. Are you a nerd like me? If you're a nerd, at least type nerd mode in the chat below this video. Because at the end of the day, all of us make more money with our brain than we will with our back. Doing more of the same thing you're already doing, it will help, but there's limits to it. There's not an 8th day of the week. There's not 25 hours a day, right? You have constraints with time. And so the way to get ahead quickly and to have quantum leaps of progress is by thinking of things like this. The third thing I want to point out is how can you insert into your business lots of different ways to lead with value? Or another way to say it is how can we wow and delight people as often as possible? There's so many interesting examples of this. Now, my buddy Will, who's off camera right here. What's up, Will? Love you, Will. Will loves Five Guys Burger and Fries. And it's a burger chain. They sell like $17 hamburgers. Some people love to hate Five Guys. But what's interesting is when you order a large French fry at this restaurant, they fill up the cup with fries. They put it in the bag. And then they grab a whole scoop and then dump an additional scoop in the bag. And what does this have to do with choreography? It has everything to do with choreography because it's wowing and delighting the customer. It's exceeding expectations. It's over-delivering on something that they didn't feel entitled to get. And what's even more interesting than that to me is that if you eat at Five Guys a lot, you know that they're gonna do it, but it still feels good watching them do it. So what areas in your business can you wow and delight people? Can you over-deliver? Can you answer the phone in 1 ring instead of 3? Can you respond in 5 minutes instead of 5 hours? Can you show up and give a free gift? Is there an extra bonus? You know, one of the systems we used in my cleaning company that I had years ago was our technicians would always try to work in a free extra service every time. However, the way that it was framed to the customer was that it was just for them at one time. They would say something like this. You know, hey, Mrs. Jones, we're all wrapped up on the job, but I told the guys, we're gonna go ahead and take care of this other thing over here. I got an extra 15 minutes, just don't tell my boss. Deal? Something like that. You see, this is choreography. It increases perceived value. We're giving before we're asking. And this is a principle in life and in business. And if we actually think of the customer life cycle for your company, there are hundreds of little tiny opportunities to do small things like this that will increase the loyalty and the average order value of your customers. One often overlooked part to business is the way that you do your service to begin with. You know, a lot of people just aren't that good. And, you know, I was doing a teaching for a bunch of entrepreneurs on the power of guarantees. You know, you can, maybe I'll make another video on this, but you can create levels to guarantees and different guarantees, more aggressive guarantees, which will reverse the risk, help you close more sales. But I get a lot of pushback from smaller companies because they're like, well, what if people, you know, ask for their money back? What if they use the guarantee? And this fear is actually rooted in the fact that they know they don't do that extraordinary of a thing in the first place. You know, if you're just kind of playing average and the way you deliver your service is average, you can choreograph a lot of stuff, but still leave people disappointed. You know, the base foundation of success in business isn't to be perfect because that's impossible, but it is to over-deliver. It's to give more than you take. It's to make sure that your customers feel like they got more than they gave. That there's two sides to the ledger. There's what they pay and then there's what they get. And maybe we need to do some work on just what they get in the first place. Like, is your quality actually good? Are you following up? Are there a lot of mistakes and errors with scheduling? There's all these things. These are core foundational things that got to be in place. Then you can play the choreography game and really crush it. But, you know, people look up to people on the internet like Alex Hormozi, for example. Alex Hormozi made all this money. It's amazing. He's got a crazy thick hair and a giant beard, and he wears a hoodie and a nose strip, and he made $17 million in profit his first full year in business with his company, Gym Launch. And all of those things are true. Or what people forget to remember is that the reason Alex made $17 million in profit in 1 year from his offer with Gym Launch is because Gym Launch was extraordinary and it irrefutably worked. Okay, it wasn't that he was some amazing marketer that was selling snake oil. He had the opposite of snake oil. People paid a ton of money to get his program because they made way more money than they paid really fast with his program. And you might not be selling information like Alex was, but the same thing is true. Is the thing that you have for sale extraordinary and newsworthy and notable in the first place? If it's not, start there before you go on with any of these other parts. A fourth way you can use choreography is through personalization. Such a simple thing. But have you ever thought how powerful a 1-minute personalized video is from you to your customer, or from your sales manager to your customer, or from your technician to your customer, or from your office manager to your customer? There's little things you can do to personalize their experience that creates a lot of perceived value. It increases their status. It makes them more connected to you as a company. And video is just one example of this. One thing we used to do that's really helpful is whenever the person on the phone was talking to a potential customer, anything they heard that could potentially be relevant in the future, we documented it. So for example, the person might hear a dog bark in the background and they'd say, "Oh, do you have a dog?" "Yeah, I have a dog. He won't shut up." "What's your dog's name?" "Oh, it's Fluffy." Amazing. They're putting notes. Dog's name is Fluffy. Or when the sales manager would go do the estimate, they're looking for certain things that are unique to the property. It might be the fact that they have a giant Michigan State Spartans flag flapping on their front porch, right? So now that gets back into our CRM, so we know that they have a dog named Fluffy, they're a Michigan State Spartans fan. And it starts to compound. And we don't use this in weird ways, we simply keep it top of mind when we're talking to people. Because when we do the follow-up call, we say, "Hey, I see the guys were out. They made a note that you had this giant Michigan State Spartans flag. Go green, am I right? How's Fluffy doing, by the way?" You see, personalization, whether it's a video or it's just using their name more often in the way you send emails, or it's remembering something unique to them or about them, it's like a giant cheat code that costs you $0, increases loyalty, and creates what are called captive customers. They don't want to go shop the price around 13 more times. You're the person that knows they have Fluffy and knows that you're a go green kind of guy. And that's a powerful, persuasive thing to do. And last but not least, let's just talk about frame control. I kind of touched on this already, but I want you to understand the concept of what a frame even is. A frame is the way that someone looks at the world, okay? So put a pin in this for a second. Let me tell you a story. John is on his way to work and he gets a flat tire. And he gets very stressed out and worked up. He's cussing, he's screaming, he's yelling, "Nothing ever works out for me," etc., etc. And this guy, John, has a particular frame on why he got this flat tire, right? Well, you may have a person, Sarah over here, who gets a flat tire and says, "Oh, thank you, Jesus, I got protected from getting in an accident." You see, these two people have the same circumstance. The same thing happened to them, but they have different frames. So when it comes to come back to your small business, what does frame control mean? It means that you want to try to influence and control what people think about you, who they think you are. You want to think about, what do they learn first about your company? What do they learn second about your company? When you're thinking about a phone script, what's the first thing you want to happen? Do you want them to recognize your warmness and your friendliness first? Because that's you setting a frame. You're setting a frame that we are a friendly company. And then maybe as the call progresses, you want them to know that you're a premium company. And to control and create that frame, there's things that have to happen. This is choreography. Maybe it's a script. Maybe it's a PDF that gets emailed to them that is really high-end design with before and after pictures. It has testimonials for really high-ticket projects that you did. Maybe it's an email that has some testimonials of some really high-dollar projects you've done. You see, all these things, these choreographed things that are very simple, they're creating and controlling frames. The other thing about frame control is a lot of people need to be or reframed, right? They might have this false belief that getting their lawn mowed is supposed to cost $30, because 53 years ago when they used to mow lawns, they charged people that amount back then, right? And they need to be reframed. Well, we want to think about these things with your choreography before it even comes up out of the customer's mouth. And you can't cover for every weird scenario. However, when you look at the customer life cycle and you're thinking, what are we saying exactly on the phone? What email goes out? What exactly does it say? When the salesperson shows up to give an estimate, whether it's on the phone or in person, what is the literature like? Like, how is the packages presented? What testimonials and proof are we presenting? What frames are we creating? What frames are we breaking? How are we overcoming objections in advance? It's this type of thinking that can create an absolute weapon of a business for you. None of this is about tricking your customers. It's actually an act of love to do this for your customers, because a lot of the very, very, very best service providers, no one knows about them. No one knows how valuable you really are, because they have the wrong frame. Because you bend over backwards and you have a "yes, please sir, can I have some more porridge" mentality. And maybe you don't answer the phone and you call them back the next day. What you've done inadvertently is create a frame that you're low status, that you're a cheaper option for that service, but you might perform the very best work out of anybody in your home market. This is often the case. People that are the best technical deliverers of the service are the worst at all this stuff, and they're left making no money, right? I don't want the evil people that know this stuff to win. I want you to win. If you're getting value out of this video, like it, share it, comment. Let's have a dialogue, not just a monologue. I don't want to talk at you. I want to talk with you. We really have a heart for small local entrepreneurs just like you. I hope this has been valuable to you. If it has, don't forget to subscribe. Until then, we'll see you in the next video.